Hi everyone, I'm going to cover a number of topics in this video, and I'm going to try and connect the dots, as it were, and that's mostly what my videos are about. And the reason why I make them is not because, I want to feed off some sensationalism of, oh, listen to this, people. I do have direct guidance to offer as well, and there is a reason why people need to wake up to reality and get with the reality that we all inherently know. And because by doing that, then we get closer to our true selves, our true sense of humanity, and we can shake off all these, what I refer to as Babylonian judgments, that are antiquated, rooted in myth and mystery, that have absolutely nothing to do with the knowledge that we have today, that has just blasted those judgments into oblivion. Like, for example, the idea that people can be judged inferior according to their age or gender or physical ability or even the colour of their skin, which is, that has got to be the most ridiculous thing of all, that people throughout history have given themselves rights to abuse and degrade and use other human beings as slaves on the foundation of the colour of their skin or their gender. These things are abominable, and yet humanity for centuries was quite happy to live by these ridiculous and actually evil judgments. And they're evil because they're lies, and lies create a false reality that then harms life on Earth. It harms humanity, and then humanity harms the planet, because this is what happens. Okay? When you've got people trained to swallow lies, to question their own sense and sanity, to swallow the prevailing propaganda. So, after Jesus, the prevailing propaganda that was, basically published widely by what came to be known as the Catholic Church, which was the Roman Senate usurping Jesus and creating an actually subverted faith in God that gave them rights to degrade women and children. That was one of the first things they did, was strip women and children of their rights throughout Europe. That was the first thing they did. That is not what Jesus came on earth to share with humanity, to give Romans the rights to strip women and children of planet Earth of their rights. Okay? But apparently he did. Apparently, for centuries and centuries, generations of people have grown up and swallowed that absolute lying judgment that has hurt all of humanity, because we're now living in a world in which half of human intelligence has been totally trashed. So we're living with a crippled intelligence that comes from just one perspective of the male side of man, with the female side completely oppressed, and she's expected to raise the children, and the fact that they're all growing up to create nuclear power and poison our planet. Oh well, obviously that's her fault, isn't it? For not being a good enough mother. This is the insanity we're living in, because the male side of humanity, you will realise that in degrading the female you have crippled yourself. And as much as the lies, the devils that profit off the lies, because let's face it, the devil is a living man, he's a criminal, okay? Just as the God is a living man who is not a criminal, who stands by the law, who questions, who, like a little child, asks questions. And the questioners throughout history have been persecuted, murdered. So everybody's living in fear and nobody dares question the cannibal sitting at the table. demanding his gold and his jewels and whatever he needs to feed his ego, to convince himself that he's the most superior being because he's this colour of skin and he's this sex and he's that strong, physically strong. He therefore has the right to do whatever he wants because he's the superior being. And who's told him that? Has God told him that? Has the reality of this universe told him that? And people are never going to get in touch with themselves now. Now we're living in actually the final years of this monstrous lie. Nobody's going to get in touch with themselves until you accept that the reality that you're living in right now is a pack of lies. You are never ever going to get in touch with yourself unless you start questioning this world, and that is when you find sense and sanity within yourself. And it is usually people who trust the sense and sanity within themselves, the people who've been forced to connect them to themselves, like for example myself as an abused child, as somebody who's experienced what are referred to as supernatural events. I've been forced to accept the reality of my own lived experience, okay? I am not going to ignore that. So I get in touch with myself, and the more I get in touch with myself, the more I realise exactly what a pack of lies I have been living in, and I am living in. And until people get righteously upset and angry about that, you know, there's nothing wrong with being angry. Anger is a very important tool. It's a survival tool. That when we get angry, you know, the skill, and that's the difference, you know, what is learning to grow up is the skill is in being able to feel angry, to deal with it, and then take positive action. Saying, rational, think about it. This has made me angry. Why has it made me angry? Oh, because there's a risk. Anger always is based on a sense of fear, because there's a risk somewhere. Either a risk to oneself, you know, people can be angry for different reasons, for selfish reasons, for egotistical reasons, but either way, the root cause of it is a threat. Now, these threats are either entirely narcissistic, as in the case of Trump, who gets angry and offended by people who question his blatant racism and attacks against women. But then there's the righteous anger that comes from being thoroughly aware that, no, this situation is putting innocent people at risk. It's putting children at risk. It's putting our planet at risk. How far into the future can we see now? You know, well, everybody can be a prophet today, can't they? Because it doesn't take much to know which way the wind is blowing by today. So this is why I'm sharing this information, and I hope people connect the dots. I know that it is complicated, and that is the way they get away with their crimes, is by causing complications to create confusions, and then by the time people are arguing and debating the ins and outs of it all, it's all been and dusted and they're on to the next travesty. And we are living in very serious times. We need to get with reality. Okay? Now, today I'm starting with this programme which has been recently shared by RT, Russian cosmonaut answers, was moon landing faked? And it's hosted by Rick Sanchez. And, you know, I really rate RT. I like Rick Sanchez. I like many of the news features, and I thoroughly appreciate RT News, but I am aware that even they are on a leash. Okay, even they are on a leash. And it seems they did something about the moon landings to celebrate 50-year moon landings, and they were quite surprised at the amount of people that 80% of comments do not believe that America landed on the moon. With good reason, with good reason. So in order to address that, RT has made this other programme, and they've actually got a Russian cosmonaut to answer certain questions, which, you know, are very easy questions. You know, these are not the questions that are answered here are not the questions that people are asking. Okay, I mean, you know, how did they take a photograph? How did they photograph so and so coming out of the lunar landing and blah blah blah? Or stuff that's very easily explained, but not the real deep, heavy stuff. Okay, so, you know, and again, under here is a host of comments basically questioning the lunar landing. So, you know, I've written here because I did my research, and I have to say, I came as somebody who wanted to believe that we'd landed men on the moon. Okay, I believed it. I wanted to believe it. I saw the photographs. I read the other evidence as I grew up, questioning it. I was intrigued by it, but I came to the conclusion, well, you know, it's perfectly feasible that they did film the stuff on Earth, do the photographs, because maybe the stuff that they'd actually taken on the moon, you know, none of it worked. You know, there were no photographs. So I could understand that they might do that they might fake it first in order to at least give the public, show them, oh yes, we went to the moon, rather than just disembodied voices over a radio. Okay, so I was prepared to but still I was prepared to accept that they went to the moon, until as I got older, more and more information comes in, I learn more about physics and science and space, because I'm very interested in the universe, in physics, how space works, the substance of stars, just the whole amazing wonder that created us. I'm immensely interested in it, and I study it. Okay, I mean, even string theory, right down to string theory, I keep up to date because I'm immensely interested in this amazing universe that really we all need to be. Now, in 2005, I was informed by NASA that they were sending the Lunar reconnaissance orbiter to the moon, and it was going to have a camera attached to it, and they were going to show us footage of the lunar landing sites. And I was delighted, because I was like, yeah, that's it, the hoax thing will all be over, we'll all know for sure they went to the moon. And in 2009, what came back was a series of shiny dots on a black and white moon. And only months before, the shots from Mars, from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter camera, beautiful, full colour, highly detailed shots from Mars, but the moon, which is a stone's throw away compared to Mars, we get the same black and white shots, barely improved in quality since the alleged Apollo missions of the 1960s and the 1970s. You know? And I was disgusted. I would have liked to see a full colour moon, you know, full colour pictures with the same intensity and degree of clarity as we're getting from Mars. If we can do it for Mars, let's do it for the moon. According to NASA, in 2005, we were going to be able to see the tops of the seats on the Lunar rover lander. That was from the guy that developed the camera. And I'll dig the link out for you. I'll tell you, they keep removing it off the internet, but, you know, moving it from place to place, but I keep refinding it. And that is what the guy who created the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter camera, he promised that they gave examples of exactly what we would be able to see. And instead, we get a group of pixels. And we're told this is the lunar lander and this is the rover. It's like, look, I'm sorry. Because then, after that, other evidence has come to light. So, you know, from 2009, I was questioning, but then this other evidence has come to light. So this is my comment here. Look, there is no way they landed men on the moon. It did not happen. We know it. We know the moon is highly radioactive. Why didn't we know it over 40 years ago after they brought radioactive rocks and dust from the moon? Can RT find any mention of the radioactive moon rocks and dust? Why has Norway's moon rock turned out to be petrified wood? Take another look at the alleged lander. Seriously, I wouldn't trust taking a trip over the Pacific in that ramshackle contraption. Measurements taken by NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter show that the number of high-energy particles streaming in from space did not tail off closer to the moon's surface as would be expected, with the body of the moon blocking half the sky. Rather, the cosmic rays created a secondary and potentially more dangerous shower by blasting particles in the lunar soil, which then becomes radioactive. Overall, future lunar travellers face a radiation dose 30% to 40% higher than originally expected, Spence said. And I've left the link there. Here it is. It's from 2009. Okay. And so, it took the 2009 LRO to inform us that the moon is a lot more radioactive than expected, and not the NASA Apollo missions. I note it is now difficult to find this article linked via Google. Instead, a host of links on the search engine inform us that the moon is only slightly radioactive, equals more evidence of the lie. Please, get a backbone and check the facts. We don't need another generation born to swallow blatant lies and to train to ignore their own sense and sanity. Now, do you understand? That's the point I'm making, because this is part of it. This is part of it. When people are asking questions and they're not being given valid answers. Now, it may be that I'm wrong, that they really did land men on the moon, and I will be delighted. But at the moment, I've got far too many questions that I am not receiving answers for. Instead, it's no comment, go away, you mad conspiracy theorist. I'm sorry, that is not good enough, you see. A child needs education. And we are the human child. In this universe, according to universal time, as a species, we are a child and we need the full facts and information. We cannot survive on lies. Lies will destroy us. And no matter how much money they create out of the lies, the profits and wealth and the rights they give themselves to create that illicit money supply and use it for illicit purposes, to feed on lies, to control, in order to get what? Ultimately, easy access to young women and children is what they want. Easy access to slave workforces is what they want. We're dealing with a set of criminals. And it's a criminal consciousness within humanity that is a minority but has grown in power precisely because it's a brutal, cruel, sadistic, malicious force of power. And it will use any means, what way it can. And it uses fear to control people. And lies keep it all going. Because how has America been blackmailed by how many nations? By China? Who knows why America suddenly decides that, oh yeah, we'll outsource all our factory production to China, and watch American citizens' lives just fall apart as they lose the jobs and the whole economy starts to collapse, because what we are is an Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail. It is total madness, and this is where lies, when they're told at this level, that's where they leave people at risk. So if NASA did blatantly lie, take part in this lie, we understand why they were persuaded to do it, you know. Oh, because we've got to show the world that, you know, the free world is superior, we've beat Russia, because otherwise, you know, Russia will do it, Russia will say they went. Okay? Don't worry, astronauts, by the time it all it starts to show we'll have the technology to be able to get the moon and put the flag on there and all the other things to show that you really did go. Nobody will ever know. But people do know, because we do ask questions. We ask questions about why then, if this stuff was radioactive, was there no mention of the radiation in the lunar soil and the lunar rocks in the 1960s and 70s? Why is it? It takes an instrument on the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter to measure the radiation, to inform us with the unexpected results that the moon is actually more radioactive than we first realised. Why was that unexpected when you've had how many NASA Apollo missions going to the moon, bringing lunar soil and lunar rocks back, and only now we know that actually it's 30 to 40% more radioactive? I mean, if you go through that article, it talks about the moon being hit by gamma rays from the sun. So, you know, the astronauts were on there totally oblivious to the fact that they could be hit at any moment by a gamma ray. I mean, seriously, people. And this is what I mean. Even if you aren't prepared to go through all the evidence of, you know, the shadows from rocks and this and that and whatever, at least notice the one piece of solid evidence when it comes down to the radiation and their own measurements. We're talking about NASA's own measurements here. And stick with the one fact, because let's face it, if that one fact is valid, then we expect a valid explanation. And that's when you bring in all the other evidence. But there's always one piece of evidence, really, that sets the alarm off. And this has to be it. This has to be it. Because this is from the horse's mouth itself. That they now have realised the moon is highly radioactive. Why is it Google now is just full? You go on the search, oh, the moon's only slightly radioactive. No mention of the gamma rays talked about in this article. You see, these are the things. Now, I'm going to share a couple of other links now. And seriously, people, check them out. All together, to watch all these videos here, these next few videos I'm going to share, it will take you a couple of hours. But I tell you, it's a couple of hours well worth spending in order to know, you know your enemy. Unless you know what you're dealing with, you cannot stand up for your rights. You cannot succeed in erasing that threat. Okay? Know your enemy. And people don't. People have been told, oh, your enemy's a Muslim if you're a Christian. If you're a Muslim, the enemy's your Christian. If you're a Jew, your enemy's who? Muslims and Christians and actually anybody who doesn't like Zionism, apparently. Because apparently every Jew is a Zionist. Are they really? Of course they're not. Please, stand up, non-Zionist Jews. Stand up for your rights. And take back your faith that has been usurped. And the same for Christian people. Take back your faith that has been, your faith in Jesus that has been usurped by the Church of England and the Roman Church. And the same for the Muslim people. Take back your faith that has been stolen and usurped by what amounts to the Daesh. It's time for humanity to stand up. And if people who don't believe in any faith, but who nonetheless do believe in human rights and live lawfully, stand up for your rights, your faith in your own humanity and your own sense and sanity. Because we are being ruled by madness. Only madness would even give a chance for 3 nuclear melt-throughs to happen at Fukushima, and the damage that it's causing, that's going to be left to our children's 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 children. Seriously? We're all going to ignore it while we pontificate about immigrants? So here is the first thing, you know, Trump's mobster mentor ran a blackmail ring. So, you know, this is going on to the Epstein case, or Epstein, as some people call him. It turns out, you know, that this is coming from Acosta himself, okay, that as he told Congress on oath that Epstein was an intelligence asset. And it very, very strongly looks like he was a Zionist, a Mossad intelligence asset. Okay, Mossad works for Zionists. And he was engaged in blackmail and entrapment. It seems that's where he's got his enormous wealth from, and it seems that that is the kind of consciousness that's been deliberately placed into power in America and in Britain, because we cannot forget that Maxwell, Robert Maxwell, the newspaper mogul who, you know, well, he was found to be a criminal, wasn't he? We ran off with messed up the pension funds. He was the start of it. And it's his daughter, it appears, as being, you know, like the madame on behalf of Jeffrey Epstein, grooming these girls, bringing them in to his quarters to be shared amongst all these rich men from around the world, rich and powerful people, and then, you know, all of them open to blackmail. It seems to be what's going on. Now, when Maxwell died, he was given a state funeral in Israel, and the Israeli Prime Minister of the time said nobody had done more for Israel than Robert Maxwell, you know. So I ask you, go and have a look at Robert Maxwell's history, okay, and look at the crimes that he committed, and then ask yourself, what kind of country is it that relies on somebody like that, on a criminal, that a criminal by their criminal activities, nobody more than this criminal and his criminal activities has done more for Israel. We need to understand what these Zionists are about. Check my previous video. In fact, I'll leave a link to it. And, you know, the Israel lobby, prevalent all over the world, now trying to tell us that anybody that criticises the atrocities of the Zionist military actions against the people of Palestine, anybody who criticises that is anti-Semitic. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Because I'd like to see you prove that in a court of law. Because I would be counter-charging you with a malicious prosecution and asking you to prove to me how you have any right, Zionists, to call yourselves Jews. So, we know this was going on. We know it's been going on in Britain, okay? When you've got a Prime Minister, Edward Heath, who's known as the Claws, who today police are 120% certain that he abused boys from children's homes procured for him by Jimmy Savile, who was himself a British intelligence asset, doing exactly the same as Epstein. Now we start to understand why our society is in such a shambles, and why there's so much confusion, and why there's so much hate, and why there's so much crime, and why bankers are too big to be prosecuted, but the guy on the street who they've made homeless and destitute can be imprisoned for begging. Right? Now we understand. These are the realities we need to get with ourselves, to get a backbone. Get to your backbone. Get to your strong sense of righteousness. We know what reality is, and we are affronted by this pack of lies that we're being asked to swallow, because it's a dangerous thing. And if we're going to survive, we're in a dangerous... The universe is a cold, dark place, okay? And it has favoured life, and it is time for us to celebrate that, to appreciate what we have. Because we're not appreciating what we have, we're too busy, we're being conditioned by liars and thieves, a set of criminals that do not want to live within the context of universal law, of abundance and compassion, that upholds all our human rights. Oh, no, no, no. They want to create their own law to live in their own little madman's fool's paradise, which is basically penis head, what penis wants. Okay? No. This needs to end, and we need to get with reality. So, we know this is going on. We know it's been going on in Britain. There's no doubt about it. This, Captain John Lord, Fire Captain John Lord. God bless this man, this lady, absolutely spot on information that he's sharing. He knows what he is talking about. We're talking EMF, weaponised energy weapons. Okay, weaponised microwaves. They want to put 5G throughout every society across the whole planet. That's their plan. Okay, check it out. Check it out. That it can be weaponised at any moment. That your smart meters can be used to cause fires within your home. To be used to cause power surges that will cause your fridge to explode. Okay, understand what the threat is here, how they move by stealth, while everybody's looking at Trump now. Oh, how dare he say this racist remark, blah, blah, blah. Yes, it's terrible. It's a sign. It's a sign, and people need to get angry with it. But understand that even that is a distraction. Because meanwhile, they're plotting war with Iran, aren't they? Meanwhile, he's getting away with sex crimes. It takes the attention away from Mueller report. Where is the Mueller report now? Oh, what's happened to that? No, everybody's on with Epstein. Everybody's on with the send her back. And then he'll find another trope to distract the media with. And everybody's forgot about the Mueller report, apparently. That's old news now. Let's get on with the new news. Yeah. No, sorry. Let's get right back. Let's get back to the old news. Okay? Let's connect the dots. Let's not leave the old news. Let's understand that old news leads to new news that then becomes old news and more new news, but it's all the same news, crime and corruption. It's all the same news. Now, he gives photographic examples. He went and examined these sites himself. He's a Californian fire captain, okay? He taught people. He knows what he is talking about. Listen to what the man is saying. Think about what is going on. Check out 5G. I'll leave you a link to it. They are planning to put that. Now, you know, the claim is, oh, you're all Luddites. Well, no, we're not actually. We are not Luddites. We are asking serious questions. And even members of Parliament are asking questions because the public are asking questions. Well done, public. But who's picking up on our questions? Are we seeing them really? Is our voice being reflected in the mainstream media? No, it is not. Why not? Because it's being controlled by the Zionist-controlled Maxwells of the world, isn't it? So, please check that out. Now, we have this story here that again has just been buried, and it's very recently come out. UK whistleblower Catherine Gunn, a young specialist working for Britain's government communications headquarters, exposed a highly confidential memo that revealed the United States' collaboration with Britain in collecting sensitive information on United Nations Security Council members in order to pressure them into supporting the Iraqi invasion. Basically, the same tactics that Cambridge Analytica uses. Bribery, blackmail, entrapment. Finding sensitive information in order to pressure them into supporting the Iraq invasion. And, you know, the British press covered it all up, buried the story. They tried to prosecute her, but fortunately, her excellent lawyer managed to get her off. Okay? But nonetheless, the war went ahead. And as you look, I'll leave you these two links, the part 1 and part 2. And as the press people there, the people around the table who were involved at the time, say, we feel, you know, over 1 million Iraqi people are dead. We feel more could have been done. We blame ourselves. But actually, what could they do? Because the BBC wouldn't pick up on the story. No news media would pick up on the story, would stop that war. So the League didn't stop the war. But as she says, why would they need to get sensitive information on UN Security Council members in order to blackmail them into supporting a war if there was anything even remotely legal or credible about that war, about the reasons for it? For the invasion. But 1 million people are dead. The children have had their heads chopped off in the streets. Children are being born dead of deformities, of depleted uranium. These things have happened while we, the public, have been feeding our faces and living it up in Babylon. And us being now indoctrinated to even deny our children's future, even to threaten their food and medicine supply, even to sell off their NHS to a load of criminal health insurance corporations in America in order to buy their toxic food, Monsanto contaminated food that's banned in the EU for an inflated price. This is the level of craziness. This is what I mean about connecting the dots and the consciousness being trained to swallow lies and to question their own sense and sanity. So, thank you for taking the time to listen, because, as I say, it is time. We do need to stand up for our rights, humanity, because we are the last living line of defence for the next generation. And we need to end this madness that is governing our planet, and our lives right now are being governed by a set of criminal sadists. I call them psycho-sado-fascists, because that is what they are, and they depend and rely on that ilk of consciousness in humanity that should be a minority, that should actually be, the law should be targeting and identifying before they get a chance to commit their damages, before they get a chance to commit their crimes. Never mind standing up for election while bragging about grabbing women in the pussy. What kind of a world has this become? Seriously, for somebody like me, people like myself, survivors of sexual abuse from childhood, and this is what we have survived and struggled for and stayed positive. What? No, sorry, no, I say no. And I'm wondering why the rest of the world isn't saying no, and the evidence is there staring us in the face.